Welcome to Camera Shake Podcast, episode 98, the podcast where we talk about photography, videography, and anything that's got anything to do with any of that. If you are listening to the audio version of this, be reminded that you can find us in full Technicolor over on YouTube. If you are on YouTube already, then just make sure you hit that like and subscribe thing, hit the box, leave a comment, all of that good stuff, because that would help us a ton. Now, that being said, episode 98, 2 away from 100.
Was it?
Well, it is.
Wow. There we go. We're doing something special for number 100.
Well, I think we're in the early planning stages.
It is very early planning, and I'm not convinced we're going to get there.
Well, but yeah, it should be fun. We've got some ideas. It should be fun for sure. So, anyway, for today, what have we got? Well, it's been busy. Like the last couple of weeks have been busy with lots of busy stuff.
We're really busy with loads of busy stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
Busy to a degree that I'm really not used to since the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's been non-stop for a few weeks, really. But yeah, it's been busy a couple of weeks. What have we done since? What did we do last episode? Oh, Dave was on.
Yeah.
Of course he was.
Yeah, Dave Williams. In fact, you can see our lovely faces in Dave Williams' latest video.
Yeah.
If you head over to Dave Williams, or would it be Dave Williams on YouTube?
Dave Williams, yeah. And to pay homage to him, we have pink behind us today, as well as our usual blue.
Only for you, Dave.
That's just for you, Dave. And if you're watching this, make sure you comment.
Yeah, let us know whether you like the new color in the background. So we have a little split color scheme going on there. But we like it. We thought we'll stick with it for a while.
We'll stick with it for a while.
Changing things up. Anyway, so we've been busy doing a number of different things. We did a three heads in a row talk.
Yep.
A week or so ago.
Yep.
Which was a live shoot and a live edit session in front of an audience.
Yep.
Which was very cool. So that was over in Watford, a little town just outside of London.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. Actually, I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, it was really good. And we had a surprise visit at the same time, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, surprise for you, really. But
surprise for me. Dave Williams. That's right. I'm only calling him Dave from now on. So Dave was there. And he, so I modelled for one part of it, Vogue. And he modelled for another part of it, Vogue. And then you did the edit. We filmed the whole thing, didn't we?
Yeah.
Just for prosperity, but we might make some of that, if not all of it, available.
Yeah, so that will be on our channel in a different playlist because we're trying to kind of fan out a little bit with some different things. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going to be happening over the next month or two on the channel as well. So if you are listening to the audio version, check that out.
So that talk was obviously, it was about your how you go about shooting your 3 heads in a row style portraits. And I learned a lot just from sat there listening and modelling Vogue.
Blue Steel.
It's all sort of Blue Steel. What was the other one? Blue Steel.
Oh, I can't remember.
Magnum.
Magnum, that's it.
Magnum. Yeah. And but there's all sorts of techniques in there that you can apply to any portrait or any type of photography, really. You'll learn a lot. Well worth a watch when it's available.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this, I think the thought behind it was really, the realization that when more often than not, let's say, whenever I've, attended a portrait photography talk or a demo or something like that, it's really usually all about either the lighting or the posing, one of the two. And nobody really ever mentions anything about building a connection with your model and facial expressions.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, it's always like, I very often look at images, portrait images where, the lighting's beautiful and the model is beautifully posed and even the costume's great and all the rest of it. But then you look at the face and it's dead, dead behind the eyes, basically. And with the 3 heads in a row project, it's the exact opposite. And I'm trying to achieve with that is all about the facial expression. The lighting's always the same in all the shots. The whole setup is always the same. It's just what makes it funny is seeing people with these really, outlandish facial expressions, which is the thing. And so in order to achieve that, especially with somebody that you don't know, it's really all about building up trust so that you can push them past that line of where they would normally be comfortable.
That's it.
And that's really the thing that I don't really feel. That's not the sort of thing that's often talked about. It's like how to build up that connection with your subject. How to build up that trust, and how to really get somebody to give you those expressions and feel good about it.
I hope that all those that were watching on the night, and if you guys out there go and watch it at some point in the future, are able to see past the fact that the style of expression that you're trying to get is specific to this type of portrait that you're doing, but the way you go about getting it can be applied across the board.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
To any headshot, any portrait that you're taking of someone, it's easily applied.
Absolutely, and the same thing really is true. If you're just doing headshots, for example, because you have to build up that connection with with your client, and you have to build up that trust. And I always think that that's extremely difficult to do when you're doing a 20-minute session,
right?
Like an in-out type of a thing. That's never sat very well with me, and I've found since I changed the way that I do things and I just factor in more time, that I actually get vastly better results. And ultimately, that's really what matters to me. The quality of the images does matter to me, and it also matters to my clients, obviously.
Yeah.
So.
And the interesting thing is, they may not necessarily know why that shot is better than one where it was done in the first 20 minutes, let's say, but they're happier with it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's all that really matters, right?
So
and conversely, that ends up meaning that you can command more cash for those sessions, because you might be taking a longer time, but more importantly is because you're producing a higher quality image, because you're taking that additional time.
Yeah. So that's that usually works out, and I think I find that especially in the beginning, photographers tend to spend a lot of time trying to work out how to light things properly, and how to pose the subject and all that kind of stuff, as I said. But the idea of actually building up that connection is the thing that comes very, very much last. And in my head, it's like, since we're taking a photo of another human being, surely that connection should be the first thing in your mind, and everything else comes afterwards. Because even if you have a shot that's not that's just lit really well, but it's not like outstandingly awesome. If you have a really great expression, then that shot's definitely going to be superior to something that just looks dead but is amazingly lit. Yeah, in my view, anyway.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because that's exactly the way around it should be, but the other way around is how it in reality it ends up, isn't it? And sorry, my mic is getting lower and lower. I need to tighten myself up.
There's an element of obviously there's an element of confidence. That you have to have as a photographer.
That's the problem, isn't it? Is the confidence and the ability. And God forbid you have to talk to another person.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable talking to people at all that you don't know, then perhaps portrait photography is not for you.
Correct. Yeah.
On the other hand, it might be for you if you can force yourself to get through it and into certain situations. And I know ever since I started doing any kind of video and photo work that my ability to connect with someone I don't know and talk to people I don't know is greatly improved.
Oh, sure. Yeah, 100%.
I've got far more confidence in myself and, how to hold a conversation almost with someone that you don't know, and to get straight into it like you've known them forever.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of where you want to get to.
Yeah. So the first half of that talk really deals with the shooting part, and the second half, which it most likely is going to be a second video. That's the whole post-production, the editing process of that. So where I go through all the different steps that are taken to get to the end result, and and create the 3 hits in a row look. Although that being said, the techniques I go through and I demonstrate in that video, they're really pretty standard techniques. So we're talking about, cleaning up the background. We're talking about, skin retouching. We're talking about dodging and burning. All that, we're talking about applying textures to backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. that is really pretty standard, no matter what you do in portrait photography. And so, that in itself can be useful, I think, no matter what style you shoot. So all in, I think it was a really good, really positive evening.
Yeah, there's a lot of good feedback at the end too. So that's a big reason why we want to make it available to you guys out there, is because there was a lot of positive feedback, and which means hopefully it'll be useful for anyone.
Absolutely. So, and hopefully we'll do similar talks in the future, which would be fantastic. And if you are a member of the Watford Camera Club, well done for attending.
Yes,
excellent. Little shout out there. So that was great. And Dave Williams was there as well. That was total coincidence, because the only reason why he was there actually was because we had a phone conversation that afternoon, and he goes like, "Oh, I saw on, I can't remember, Instagram or something, I saw that you're holding this talk," and I'm like, "Yeah," and he goes like, "Oh, where is it?" And I said, "Oh, it's in Watford, a place in Watford," and he goes like, "Oh, I'm only like 2 hours away. What time is it?" And I was like, "Whatever, it was 7:45." And he was like, "Yeah, I can be there." So I thought I won't tell you specifically, so that it would be a surprise.
And the funny thing is, I pulled into the car park, still didn't notice his massive green van. It's only when I turned around I finally clocked it.
And to be fair, his van was actually parked in the shadows.
Yeah. Much like you, Dave.
Always in the shadows. Anyway, so that was good. Awesome fun. Now, the other thing we did was we shot the Battle of the Bands final. Oh my God.
That took a couple of hours, didn't it?
Yeah, that was a marathon. But that was the first actual kind of rock concert shoot I've done literally since before the pandemic. So the first time in 2 years.
Yeah.
Pretty much exactly, because it was
right.
the last concert shoot I did before the pandemic, because it was the beginning of March.
And then it all hit. Yeah, that's right.
And then it hit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, because it was meant to be at the end of March originally, and then the first lockdown came in. The venue pulled it forward, so the date changed, which was annoying at first, but then it turned out to be a godsend, because had it remained on the original date, it would have never happened.
Would never happened.
So that was the thing. We can talk about that, because I think Jenny, from I gather people are interested in concert photography. We will actually have a really awesome concert photographer on the show in the next few weeks. So I'll keep you posted about that. So that'll be interesting. But
yeah.
So from a video perspective, because from a photo perspective, it's hard work. It's hard work all the way through. And we'll talk about camera settings and all the rest of it in a minute. But from a video point of view, because you filmed the whole shebang.
Yeah.
How was that?
I'm still tired from it.
Yeah.
So when did we arrive? 9-ish? I think I got there at 9-ish, whatever it was. I got home at 9 in the morning, 9 a.m. people. Got home at 1 a.m., I think, in the end. Yeah. Quick stop at McDonald's on the way back. Right?
Nice.
Wait, am I not allowed to say that?
Oh, no,
were you allowed to be at McDonald's that night?
I was. Was I at McDonald's once or twice that day?
Twice.
Oh, yeah, twice. That's right.
It was twice.
Oh, it was twice. It was twice.
That's all we had, though.
Ah, happy days.
That and a couple of coffees.
In brackets, oh my God, I found some awesome smash burger recipes, or some local burger recipes from different places across North America. Oh my God, barbecue's coming.
Ah, yeah.
And that will be on YouTube.
It's been nice weather the last couple of days. So
yeah, it's been.
It's not quite barbecue weather, but...
Oh, well, I don't care. These recipes will need to be tried.
Nice.
I'll report more later.
But yeah, it was a long old day. The trickiest thing to begin with was working out where to place a couple of static cams.
Right.
Because it was only going to be me on video, so I wanted a couple of different angles that were available. And then working out, based on available lenses and camera bodies, what would be the right one to put where. And yep, that's right. Once it all got set up, changed the minds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. There was a lot of that.
But yeah, no, it worked out well. We ended up having a kind of wide, high shot, which was up in the lighting booth. It feels like it was going to be a really steep angle on the stage, but it wasn't actually. It was still quite head on and worked really well. Just about got the whole stage in, and a little bit of the first couple of rows.
Right.
So that was great. Stuck another camera up to the side of the stage, shooting in. I think it was just a GoPro on that in the end. And then I was running around with a gimbal, filming just random clips and close-ups and whatnot. But yeah, that was really exhausting. Really, really exhausting. What I have found, I've looked back at some of the footage, is these static cam up top has come out looking great. The GoPro has come out looking like GoPro. I mean, what do you want me to say about that?
Yeah.
It just looks like GoPro. Rubbish. As good as that stuff looks. And then, so I was using the R6 on the gimbal for weight mostly. And so I feel like I overexposed a lot of it slightly.
Okay.
Not that it's caused a problem, but I feel like my raw footage was ever so slightly overexposed. And I've been racking my brains as to how I managed to do that. And I think I was relying too much on my meters.
Right. Oh,
right.
Okay.
And there's I can't even remember the R6 has got a waveform on it. Do you know what? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it does on video.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I think it does. And so I was relying on that, and you also get the standard kind of meter at the bottom as well. So I was paying attention to those, and what I don't think I saw was that some of the highlights were clipping, as you can understand, with all the lights that are on stage, to expose someone's face and keep those from clipping. Those lights from clipping is pretty much impossible to do. Oh, hello, kitty cat. You joining us? And so I would generally underexpose a bit on that to try and retain some of those high highlights. And that in itself can cause a bit of slight problem. It can mean your footage is noisier because you're underexposing a little bit. So when you're bringing out the shadows in log in particular, it does bring up a lot of the noise that's there. So it's a real fine balancing act. And I think in this occasion, I was just slightly, maybe half a stop over most of the time. Smokes, can you go? Huh? So we're going to take a slight pause here while we remove an animal from the scene. Smokes, come here. Come on. Come on. There you go. Down you go. And she's gone. Yeah, so I think some of that's clipped a little bit, but I don't think that's the end of the world. It's not really that much of an issue. Thankfully, with where it is noisy too. It's
what was your metering mode?
What would it have been in this instance? I mean, I was just paying attention to the waveform, so it doesn't really matter. So you see you see everything everywhere. So for those who don't know exactly what a video waveform will show, is it will show your shadows at the bottom and your highlights at the top, and the image from left to right. So if you were to overlay the actual image on the waveform or the waveform over the image, it would all correspond. So if you put a waveform up large and you were on a static cam and you moved your hand like that, you would see your hand move in the waveform. That's literally, that's all you really need to know about a waveform. But you then need to know, well, where should skin fall on that waveform? Which IRE that should fall on. And when you're shooting in log, you need to know actually where your highlight and your black clipping is, because it's not 0 and 100.
Right.
It's more like 10 and 80, depending on the log profile.
Okay.
So you've just got to be aware of some of that information. And when you're shooting a concert, it's okay for black to clip.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
It's all dark.
It's
provided the right stuff is exposed correctly. So that's a very quick introduction to a waveform monitor.
So the thing about metering, in a photographic context, it's really if you're using the built-in light meter, which you can, and it's useful in that sort of situation, then you need to make sure you've got your camera set to the right metering mode. Because if you think, like, for
What do you
instance,
typically use?
spot metering, because if you think about it, the difference between, let's say, matrix metering, which is what it's called in Nikon cameras, which basically takes the overall frame into account, and spot metering is that, and spot metering, you point your focus, your spot, essentially, on a particular part of the frame, and it will just literally just meter that bit there. A concert situation is tricky because you have, bright lights on stage, and then you have severe lack of light in other parts. So really, and you've got moving lights as well. So you typically spot meter, and you want to spot meter for the face of the performer, technically speaking, and that usually gives you a pretty decent readout, and then you make a decision as to whether you want to underexpose or not.
So would you typically, let's just say in the first song, would you spot meter off, say, the singer's face, for argument's sake, and get your exposure about right, and just leave it at that unless something drastically changes?
So the way I do it, and again, this, you speak to different concert photographers, and they'll have slightly different methods, but what works for me is that I lock my ISO, so I don't use auto ISO or anything like that. It's usually locked. I mean, in this case, I think it was locked at about 2500 or 3200, so I can't remember, something like that. And then the aperture is close to wide open, so 2.8 usually, or 3.2, about there. And then I adjust the exposure with the shutter speed. So, and that's really useful because the shutter speed is basically on the selection wheel on the back of my, basically I control with my thumb, and so I can flick that left and right really quickly. So when I see the meter go out dramatically, and I already know that I want to underexpose by about half a stop to a stop roughly, but when that meter shows, when it goes off, I can then regulate really quickly, literally within a split second. So if it goes, if my meter goes down into the minus area too far, I'll basically drop the shutter speed. And I know I have a lower limit of about 125 roughly, or 125th of a second. And then when it gets really bright,
1/125th.
yeah. And then when it gets really bright, then it's just a flick or a couple of flicks with the thumb the other way, and it brings the shutter speed up to like 400, whatever, 500.
And how are you changing based on your location? Because you don't have face detection on the body you use, right?
No.
So are you literally manually moving your spot around to that person's face to focus?
Okay,
and
so
then...
if you think about it, the spot is pretty much going to be in the upper half of your frame. So I don't have it central. That's mainly because that's where your face would be when you take a shot like that, right? So really, there isn't really very much. The face is usually pretty much bang on there. It might just be that you need to really quickly, ever so slightly adjust your your camera position, but all of that happens within a split second. There's really there's not much to that. The important part is really being able to regulate the exposure with your thumb. Or with the shutter speed. That's how I do it. Other people do it differently, and that's all cool. But that's how I do it, and it works for me. It's, again, especially in a situation like that where you have changing light. People annoyingly move around on the stage as well. So this is very different from shooting a classical concert, for example, where people are seated or they're sort of locked into the same position, where you set something once and you can pretty much forget it, give or take.
That's it.
Classical concerts are harder because they're usually more dimly lit, and everybody dresses in black, and a lot of the instruments are very dark in color, like cellos and violins, whatever. So you really, you have this sea of darkness, and you have like some picky face poking out. That's the problem you have with classical concerts. But with a rock concert, you've got moving lights of different colors. People wear different things. They run around like crazy, so everything's constantly changing. So just changing things with my thumb is just a super fast method of just flicking my thumb left or right, and And all it takes sometimes is just a couple of flicks. And that's literally, how long does it take? Just a split second, and that's it. It's back button focus.
Yep.
So I just separate the focusing from the shutter button. And that usually works quite well. And it's on consistent autofocus. So when I keep my thumb or my finger on the focus button, then it will just constantly
continuous focus.
Yeah, continuous focus. Yeah. So, it works. That works for me under those circumstances. Would it be nice to have like eye detection? Yes, absolutely would. Totally. Absolutely wouldn't have to worry about focusing for sure. But I'm just so used to doing it like this that that's not really much of a problem. But coming back to the metering mode, if I were to meter in, like, let's say matrix metering, which again takes the whole frame into account, my actual meter readings would be different. This is the only difference in the whole thing. Remember, when you build a light meter, the midpoint, which is usually 0, that's your optimal lighting situation. And if the needle points to the right, you're overexposing. If it points to the left, it's underexposing, right? So that much is simple. So changing from one metering mode to another essentially means that the way the camera meters things is different, and therefore the readout on the meter is going to look different. So whilst in spot metering, as I'm metering for the face, it might be perfectly exposed, or it might show me that it's perfectly exposed because it's exposing just for the face, and it's disregarding everything else that might be in darkness around that. If I switch that to matrix metering, it would show me probably 2 stops underexposed.
Yeah,
because now it's taking the whole frame into account. So the metering mode makes a massive, massive difference, and actually, the whole thing for me wouldn't work if I wasn't in spot metering. So this is really super important in that situation. And spot metering doesn't work for everything. Sometimes it really is not very useful. Like, for instance, when we're shooting properties, their matrix mode is much, much more appropriate because it takes out
makes more sense.
It reads out the whole frame.
Because there isn't a subject, let's say, so to speak, in that case, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you want to get everything to the midpoint where everything is approximately well exposed, rather than, of course, if you're shooting an artist or a musician on stage, the face is the most important thing. I mean, that's what you want to expose for. Or if you're taking a close-up shot of somebody playing a guitar, then it's the hands, for example.
Yeah.
So that's that sort of thing. There's always a lot of movement, and I think the thing about motion blur in concert photography is, I don't know. I mean, sometimes people have too much of a hang up about seeing motion in imagery. It's all about people trying to work out how to freeze movement in a concert situation, and that's actually much more difficult because now you're talking about much higher shutter speeds, and then of course you need to counter-regulate. And even if you're using, let's say, a prime lens, for example, a 1.4 lens or something like that, which gives you extra aperture to play with, which means you can increase your shutter speed, which is cool. But of course, now you might run into depth of field issues. That being said, you're actually far enough away from your subject for that to usually not necessarily matter that much.
Yeah.
But the real disadvantage of shooting with prime lenses, in my opinion, is that you're really stuck with one focal length. And in a concert situation, I zoom all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, because
you're just going to end up with what's effectively the same shot.
Yeah, and that's really a problem,
right?
And the thing is, like, and you can argue, well, you could have 2 bodies, but you still have to switch. So you're missing a lot because you're constantly switching between bodies.
Yeah.
And whilst that's happening, a lot of stuff happens on stage, and you might miss stuff. Then the other thing is, let's say you went to a concert and it's like a friend of yours or something playing a band or whatever, and you shoot the whole concert and you've got like 12, 15 tracks to shoot, 20 tracks to shoot. Fine, you can change lenses out and do all that kind of stuff. If you only have 2 or 3 songs to shoot, you need to vary everything really quickly so you get a great variety of different shots. And in this particular case, it was actually 2 songs, so each band played two tracks. And so my strategy there was really simple. I shoot with one body, I shoot with a 24-70 for the first song, is relatively wide, and I get the wider shots in, and I actually also get an idea of how people move on stage.
Yeah, that's it.
Then for the second song, I shoot with a 72-200, and that then gives me the opportunity to actually get some of the details in. And typically for a third song, I'll then break out something that's a little bit more fun, like, you know, a 14-24, where you get some really super wide shots. They look awesome, especially when you're close to the subject. One of my favorite shots is actually when you're really close to, you just in front of the stage, you're really close to somebody's pedal board, like something, you know, one of the guitarists or something. And it's that moment just before they press the pedal, when you've got the foot close to the pedal board, you can see the underside of the sole, and then you can see the rest of the body sort of almost like, you know, kind of fading away into the background. Because it's such a super wide lens, the proportions are slightly distorted, which makes it look really quite interesting. But also because it is such a super wide lens, all of that's in focus.
Yeah.
So you get everything focused from the sole of the shoe to the back of the head, you know, and you're relatively close to the whole thing. And it's, you know, those are well, I like those kind of shots because I think they're interesting.
Yeah.
But that's, to me, that's the thing that usually happens on the third track. Just because I have
something that's a bit different.
Because I've done all the bread and butter shots already at that point, and I can play a little bit. So if there was a time for me personally, and again, if you shoot concerts and, you know, you do things differently, actually it'd be interesting, you know, get in touch and let us know how you do it. But the way I do it is that the third track for me is playtime. You know, so I can try like a much wider lens, like a 14. I can break out a prime lens. You know, because everything I need is actually in the bag already by that point.
Very. I think it's interesting because what ISO do you typically find yourself shooting at in these concerts?
What?
What ISO do you normally end up shooting at?
So it really depends on the venue. I mean, anywhere between 1600 and 6400, I guess.
As high as that, yeah.
Yeah.
You see,
I mean, 6400, to be honest with you, that would be probably more likely in classical concerts.
Yeah.
It's just because you haven't got the big floodlights and like, you know, the stage lighting like that. Everything is usually quite a little bit more, what do you call it? What's the word? Manure? No, it's not manure. Well, you know, Freudian slip.
Wow.
You know, everything is a little bit more like toned down. And slightly dimmer, and it adds to the atmosphere when you're in the concert.
Yeah.
You know, but from a photographic point of view, it's a pain in the neck. And of course, in classical concerts, you don't really have color. You know, and that's the other thing. People don't wear colorful clothes. Instruments are not really colorful. You get basically gold-colored brass instruments and wood-colored wooden instruments. And that's pretty much it. Yeah. And you know, and so. And then as far as the stages are concerned, they're not particularly colorful either, so they're pretty bland.
It makes it a tricky image to do with no kind of color contrast at all. It's just a bit...
Okay, so here, and
you know.
Again, you know, I come back to what we said at the very beginning when we talked about the 3 heads in a row thing. You know, what do you try and convey? What is the thing you want to capture as a photographer in that sort of situation? You know, if you just take a picture of somebody playing a violin, well, that's just somebody playing a violin. But if you capture somebody like, you know, if you capture somebody's facial expression when they're really just in the thing, you know, and you can really see that they are really, you know, involved in what they're doing, it's all about the facial expressions again. Yeah. You know, that's the thing. Like whether it's the soloist or whether it's just somebody in the string section.
And that's why it's important as soon as you're there and starting to try and pick out who you think those individuals are, because hopefully you can tell relatively quickly, you might do something interesting. You might. The rest of the people might not. Okay, so now you've picked out those who you might want to focus on for close-ups of some description, do something interesting. Everyone else can get captured in some medium-wide kind of shot. Yeah. And that's what's really important, to pick those out, even if it's a 4-piece band on stage.
Sure. Yeah.
They're not all gonna. Well, they might all be as interesting as each other. In which case, great, got a bit more work to do. There might only be one of them who actually ever does anything, depending on the level of the band, whoever does anything on stage, and the rest of them are just not interested and just, you know,
And especially
chicken heading across the stage.
well,
and stuff
yeah, I
like
mean, and, especially in this particular situation, where we're shooting the battle of the bands, it's the performers are young, they're relatively young, so
Yeah.
they don't necessarily have either they don't have a lot of on stage experience, or they're really nervous, because the way the event is set up is such a massive gig for them that the vast majority of them would have never played anything like it, with stage crew and lighting crew and like big lights and a huge stage and everything
sometimes
else.
I forget what it's like to be in your first originals band or whatever, and it's nervous going out on stage.
Well, it's nervous enough playing at school, but then when you're in front of a massive audience on a big stage with all the crew and all the lights, and you've got sound technicians and all that kind of stuff, people ushering you on stage, that must be nerve-wracking. And I'm amazed.
You see, and I'd almost refuse to play without all of that stuff these days.
Well, yeah, that's different. That's very different. But I'm always amazed what happens when, because we see them throughout the day doing the sound check, and we see how nervous they are. But then when they actually walk out into the limelight, basically, and they perform, I'm always amazed how they really pull it off. And this was the seventh Battle of the Bands that we've done. So we've done this for 7 years with a year's gap in the middle because of COVID. But it's really I'm amazed. And when I literally just finished editing all the photos from that shoot, and looking back through those, there's some incredible shots in there.
Yeah,
Not that I'm blowing my own trumpet, but it's incredible because we've seen these kids come through the audition stages and through sound check and all that kind of stuff, and then watching them audition and seeing them on stage at the final are two totally different things. I mean, even the ones where we think like, okay, well, they may have just scraped through to the final or something. When you actually see them perform, they're incredible. So yeah, that was good fun.
Yeah, really was. Really, really was. We had a pro band on, didn't we, towards the end?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Who were great at what they did, and their idea of what I really liked was their projector, where they're projecting basically a story in comic form all the way through the concert. So the concert was... It's not like they just... start and go, right, yeah, what's next, chaps, and look at their set list. It's set. It's playing back with any backing tracks or click that they've got going, so that the video is always in sync throughout the entire performance, because it carries on when they're not playing, and then they get ready, they'll get cues in their ears to go, right, moving on. That was all very, very cool. I may as well have not filmed it. And the reason for that is because they had and wanted all of the lights off on stage. Every single light was off, except they had one small, and it was small, uplighter into the drums, which at times looked very, very cool, and uplighters within their custom-made mic stands.
Yeah, that's right. That did look cool.
Which, again, looked really, really cool. And then, obviously, the light from the projector onto the screen that they were using for the video. But you couldn't see anything else.
So that was actually one of the biggest issues. It was...
just needed some more general ambient light to go across it, and it would have looked great.
Yeah, the problem, of course, I mean, you can see why they did that, because of the projector thing. If there was too much light on the stage, you wouldn't have seen the projection. But because of the projection, you really couldn't see anything else. And what it meant was there weren't any photos to be had, because it was literally darkness across the stage. Yeah. And that in many ways was disappointing, because it was such a good band, and it would have been great to be able to create some, promotional material for them there. And I think that's really something they're going to have to think about in their marketing, because actually what it means is they've really come away with a lot less material to potentially promote themselves now. And that's a problem.
They need to get in a hall or somewhere which can be used to feel like a bit like a concert, a bit, gig situation, and then you sort of try out some lighting techniques to see how that projector can still be seen.
Yeah.
Yet there's enough ambient light on stage for people to see, because the crowd couldn't even see their faces. They didn't no idea what was going on.
Yeah, and the thing about projections, there's a thing we did. So years ago, we started a thing called Guitar Lounge, which was an open mic night for under 18s, which we did for the Buckinghamshire Music Trust, so a similar thing. And we didn't really have a lot of stage lighting at the time, so we had like PA gear and whatever. And so I thought, okay, since we haven't got a budget for like moving lights and any of that, why don't I just get a projector and I basically project a movie onto the stage, onto everything and everybody on stage.
As long as it wasn't some kind of home movie.
No, there are basically, cartoons. It's like, I can't even remember, like Disney movies or whatever. But what I did was I defocused the whole thing slightly. So you could see sort of what was going on, but it was all out of focus. But what was happening was you had these projections going onto everything, and everything was moving all of the time, and all the colors and all the movement basically made it appear as if there were moving lights hitting the stage. And that actually looked awesome. And it wasn't really about seeing what the projection actually was. It was more about just giving you a visual spectacle on stage. And then over time, it became this sort of running joke thing where people were trying to work out which movie I've been projecting that night. Because it was slightly out of focus, it wasn't necessarily always obvious. But we did all sorts of different things. Like sometimes there were, cartoon type movies, animated movies. Sometimes there were actual movies. I think with Iron Man one time and whatever, So, but that really worked. It was a really cool effect.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it, isn't it? Make use of what you've got.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And, try and do something, whether it's quirky or fun or technical, it doesn't matter. Just whatever. It does the job.
But the main point was, obviously, was to actually illuminate what was happening on stage. And I feel like with the performance that we saw, last week, you could watch the cartoon thing on the projector, but you couldn't really see the band, and it's sort of missing the point a little bit.
Yeah.
And they were really good performances as well, because I was standing right by the front of the stage and actually watching them perform. They were incredible, especially the bass player was like he was like a Duracell bunny.
Yes, he was.
And so there was a lot of action. It just felt a bit like, man, if that would have been lit differently, then the audience would have actually been able to enjoy the band even more.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. But photographically, there wasn't anything happening.
No.
And I had to look at some of the shots that I took. I tried, at one point I ramped my ISO up to like over 50,000 just for the heck of it. Still nothing. I mean, it's just not happening. Yeah. So, so that was,
Amazing.
Anyway, so, there you go. And we've got another concert situation coming up in the not too distant future. Actually, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be at the Albert Hall, the Royal Albert Hall, filming.
Right. I've forgotten about that.
Filming a massive performance of over 1,000 singers.
Yeah.
So that'll be
Full house as well.
Full house as well, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's going to be epic.
Yeah. And that's, in this case, it's going to be all video.
Yeah.
So that will be cool.
We will share more after the event.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
To show you how damn difficult it was. Or easy. Who knows?
We'll see if we can create a little bit of behind the scenes content there as well, because that would be interesting.
Yeah, we should have the ability to, I think, on the day.
Yeah, the Albert Hall is a cool venue. This would be the 5th time or something I shoot there. I've only ever shot stills there.
Yeah.
So,
wear comfortable shoes.
Well, not in our case this time, because we're going to be in the same spot.
Oh, true.
Yeah, so we'll be all right. When you shoot stills, though, in the Albert Hall, let me tell you, it's all stairs.
Yeah.
All the way up to the 6th floor.
There's no way around it.
Nope.
Awful.
And to be running around like a nut. So, yeah. I've done that many times. Too many times.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
So what else is new? Actually, I tell you what, one thing we're going to have to kind of at least cut into, because it's the one thing I think everybody's talking about at the moment. And it's still music related, actually, weirdly. But it's got to do with Snoop McSnooperson, Snoop Dogg.
What about him?
So
What's he done now?
okay, so it's yet again a discussion about image. It's an image copyright issue. So,
Okay.
in a nutshell,
Right.
there's a photographer named El Pereira, and he took a photo of the rapper Nas, stood right next to what's his face, Tupac Shakur, back in the 90s or something, and then he eventually posted that photo on his Instagram. But then a little bit later, Nas then took that photo and posted it on his Instagram account. And so now El Pereira is basically suing Nas for copyright infringement over that photo. And so Snoop Dogg has weighed in and recorded a video on his Instagram account.
Of course he has.
Basically talking, he's sort of weighing in on that lawsuit, basically saying, the rights to copyright to photos should be with the celebrity who's depicted in the photo rather than with the photographer who's taken the photo. Okay, so what he's saying is in his own experience as an artist, many times somebody's taken a photo of him and then profited or benefited from that photo, and yet he hasn't seen any recompense for that, and he feels that because it's his likeness, he should have a part in that.
Is that not the same principle as me walking down the street and taking a photo of someone that's in the street or a group of people or whatever it might be, and then making money off that image, let's say, or used it in a way that I made money elsewhere, whatever it might be, I then owe those people money. Is that not?
Yeah, in principle, it would be exactly the same thing. Ultimately, it boils down to the fact that the creator of the work, i.e. the photographer who actually pressed the shutter button, the creator of that work holds the copyright to that work, and not the person that's depicted in it. So that's very clearly defined in copyright law, not only in the United States. I mean, we're in the UK, but it's exactly the same over here. So in that respect, it's no difference. Now, and although there may be slight variations when it comes to copyright laws in different countries, just think street photography is very different in Germany than it is here. But in this case, it's pretty much the same. So, it's the person pressing the shutter button that owns the rights to the photo. And so if you then, nick that photo basically and post that on your own social media, which then aids you to increase your career or whatever, then you're using that basically to market yourself, and so therefore you're infringing copyright unless you have the rights to do so. And in this case, of course, Nas didn't have the rights because he didn't ask. And I think El Pereira actually did say that he was never asked about licensing or anything like that. He would have quite happily sold the license as a photographer who actually makes a living off of licensing his work. He felt that, he felt strongly enough about it to take that to court.
What's he suing him for? Do we know how much?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. No, I don't know. But
I'd be interested to see how that plays out.
So the interesting thing was really that Snoop. I mean, what strikes me is that first of all, like in his video, Snoop Dogg was talking about, artists being hard done by because they don't get a share. But it basically just means to me that he just, he doesn't really view the photographer as an artist.
Yeah,
he just,
exactly right.
He just views himself as the artist who's done by. And that really, it didn't sit very well with me when I saw that and when I listened to him. And I'm sure in his mind, he was making a valid point, but actually that's not what the law is.
No,
so.
it's just not. He's not quite thought it all the way through, and I don't blame him for thinking that way. Just needs to think a little bit wider and just go, okay, right. Well, they are content creators. They are. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, it was really that was a thing. So it seems
I'm trying to think of an analogy for actual music creation and how that could. There's a way to.
Well, I mean, it'd be exactly the same thing. It's like, for instance, let's say you write a song, right? It gets played on the radio. Somebody tapes it, like in the olden days. Remember, we used to like tape stuff off of the radio. And then you tape a song, you record it off of the radio, and then you use it in your own stuff. Like, let's say, use it in your own video or something as backing music. So you're clearly infringing copyright there because you're not the creator of that particular work, and you should have
licensed it. Yeah, for example. Yeah.
So it's exactly the same thing. The thing about social media is, of course, it's difficult because social media is a relatively new phenomenon. It is fair to say that the laws surrounding copyright issues have not caught up with all of that social media stuff, and that I'm pretty sure there'll be amendments and changes and stuff that will be coming into place over the next, I don't know, number of years or 10 years or whatever, as social media, and it's weird to say as social media becomes more of a thing because it's already a huge thing, but I think inevitably the legal framework around something like that will always limp behind, what was actually happening. So, but anyway, at the moment, as the law stands, that is it. I mean, that's just it. It'll be easy to think that, if you're writing music, you tend to borrow creatively from other creators. In fact, Ed Sheeran, of course, is in the dock at the moment. He's got a copyright lawsuit that he's fighting. Where he's been accused of stealing a part of what's it called? A shape review. Yeah. So there's the OA part in there that he's apparently nicked from another artist.
That only got released like a year earlier or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the original track, and yes, you can see the similarities for sure. But that is about it. Anyway, so you can see how this is not really something that's just relevant in photography. It's relevant in the creative arts in general. Yeah. So,
and he always will be.
And it always will be. Exactly.
It always will be.
Because how do you prove? I mean, with photographs, it's relatively easy to tell. I mean, the thing with copyrights is that there are occasions.
This is right. Think of this, right? Think of the Ed Sheeran situation. Let's say he has taken, let's call it inspiration from someone else's song to create part of one of his tracks, right? That's the situation there, give or take. What if I, considering you just taught people how to do this, what if I went and did your 3 heads in a row shot of someone, right?
Okay.
And I used all your style, all your techniques, everything about it, got exactly the same kind of look with someone else, and then published that.
Oh, but that's fine.
Right. So how does that differ?
Okay, so the way that differs is, all right, so if somebody basically, I've just revealed my methods, right? If somebody creates a photograph that's in my style, but it's their own photograph that they've created and they press the shutter button, they made all the decisions, that's perfectly fine. That's cool. It's a homage if you want.
But if somebody... Why is it different for Ed Sheeran?
Well, this is exactly the argument that he's trying to make. Is first of all, I think his argument is that particular line is sort of a standard line that you come across a lot. These sort of court cases, you always have musicologists arguing that, and then they find different examples from lots of different songs from different eras even, where very similar melodic lines have been used, and then and then it's like, okay, I mean that's why you can't copyright a chord progression, because chord progressions are used. Just imagine, like, who wants to copyright 12-bar blues? 12-bar blues in A or in E. What? I mean, every blues track would be an infringement at that point. So it's pointless. So, yeah, I mean, unless somebody took one of my photos that I've created and then passed that off as their own or used that.
That's where it becomes different, right?
That's where it's different.
That's a bit like... Well, you've heard the songs where they've taken legally and deliberately taken a riff from a particular song and looped it in some kind
Or a
of
sample,
R&B or
Yeah.
whatever kind of track it would be. I think Every Breath You Take, for example, was done, and
Sure.
and all sorts. There's loads of tracks,
Gangsta's
loads
Paradise.
of all of them, right? That's right, Indy. You are sent the stage now. Okay, that's different. But if you did that without asking and getting permission and licensed that song to be able to do that, that's absolutely infringement.
But that's why it's commonplace to license those samples. I mean, there have been numerous occasions where, you sit in the studio, you write a song, you want to use this sample, you try and license it, and the copyright holder says no.
Yeah.
And then you're screwed because you can't use it, I mean, you could still release it, but then there's a danger that you end up being
Absolutely.
involved in some lawsuit or something, you get sued or whatever, so that's the thing. So this, I mean, it's just a thing where I was watching this, I was reading this article, and then I watched the Snoop Dogg Instagram video, and it's just blatantly obvious that he just doesn't understand copyright law in the slightest,
And that's okay. It's tricky.
It's sort of okay, but
But given his position, you can't then go and spout a whole video about something without knowing that you're, know enough to be right.
He's also been around the block for long enough to have an
Yes, he
understanding
has.
of basic copyright idea. I mean, he's like, how old now?
He must be 70.
Oh yeah,
Or
I mean,
maybe not.
in his 60s or 70s or something, whatever. I mean, surely he must have spent some time, with his record company or something or whatever. I mean, Anyway, so that is that's the hot topic at the moment.
Hot topic.
Hot topic. Other than, of course, the fact that Instagram, Facebook, and everything else, and YouTube would not have been banned in Russia.
Yeah.
So-
More bans will happen over. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
I feel sorry for the Russian people that they've got to put up with all of that. They're all, well, all right, there's some of them who should be sanctioned and all of that, that's fine. But a lot of people getting sanctioned who have just fallen into wherever they fall into because they're Russian. There are a lot of people I'm sure the majority of the Russian people want nothing to do with what's
for sure.
going on.
100%.
And I think it's right that everybody else out there remembers that, and that it's not the Russian people who are doing this.
I think that's extremely...
There will be supporters of it, of course. There would be if the UK went and did something like that. There's going to be people in the UK all for it, and most of the people not for it.
It's extremely important to remember that the vast majority of Russians that live in this country, have nothing to do with this war, clearly, and don't support it and everything else. And so, what really pains me is when I see or read reports where, premises of shops have been, spray painted or whatever, or people have been threatened. There was a report this morning that somebody's, I think the owner of a Russian sauna has had death threats on her phone. I mean, that's just ridiculous. If you think about it, that is tragic. So I think, we in this country have to remember that, this is a situation that really has very little, if nothing, to do with the people. This really is, a regime or a government going at another.
That's it.
At another government. And so, it's...
Found it interesting that, was it last week? Spotify went down twice.
Yeah, right.
WeTransfer went down yesterday, I think it
did?
was as well.
Yeah, and I was trying to
There's a
WeTransfer
couple
stuff.
other things as well that have happened. I thought,
Yeah, WeTransfer was, it went down at around about 6:30, something like that.
if issues are happening to servers that are connected to that side of the Europe, for example, and they're using other servers to whatever. But
Anyway,
stuff
not
like
that, we're not political on this podcast, obviously, ever really, but that was just something that was obviously going on this week.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we have, in fact,
have.
come to the end for this week's podcast. So this was podcast number 98. Camera Shake podcast number 98. Again, 2 away from 100. We've got something special planned for you for our 100th anniversary. Hopefully. And so that being said, this is the end of episode 98. If you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, remember that you can hop over to YouTube, where you can not only listen to our sultry voices, but you can see our lovely faces in full Technicolor over at youtube.com/Camera Shake.
And with blue and pink lights behind us.
Blue and pink lights. That's it. There's some other announcements. We're going to talk about it a little bit more next week because we're planning a Facebook group, which will be up and running by next week. So we'll tell you all about it. Then, follow us on social media, obviously Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all the rest of it. Leave a comment if you like. Leave us, support us by leaving us a little review or, hitting the like button. That would really help us a lot. And that's it for this week. See you next Thursday.
See you later.